The morning sky over the Scottish Highlands turned an unnatural shade of purple. Captain James Mackenzie of the SAS watched through his binoculars as something massive descended through the clouds. It wasn't like anything in their briefings about atmospheric phenomena or enemy aircraft. The object was perfectly spherical, about the size of a football stadium, and it hummed with an energy that made his teeth ache even from 5 kilometers away. "Control. This is Highland Eagle," Mackenzie spoke into his radio. "We have visual confirmation of the anomaly. It's not natural." The response crackled back immediately. "Copy that, Highland Eagle. Maintain observation distance. Do not engage without authorization." Mackenzie lowered his binoculars and looked at his team. Sergeant Davies, a veteran of 3 tours in Afghanistan, was setting up long-range surveillance equipment. Corporal Thompson, their communications specialist, was already working to establish a secure uplink to headquarters in London. Private Williams, the youngest of their group, couldn't stop staring at the sphere as it settled into Glen Nevis like a giant marble dropping into a bowl. "Sir," Davies called out, adjusting his scope, "there's movement around the object. Looks like ... figures humanoid, but wrong somehow." Mackenzie took the scope and peered through it. What he saw made his blood run cold. Creatures were emerging from openings that appeared in the sphere's surface. They stood roughly 8 feet tall, with elongated limbs and skin that seemed to shift between metallic silver and deep blue. Their heads were larger than human proportions would suggest, and even at this distance, Mackenzie could see they moved with predatory grace. "How many?" he asked. "At least 50 visible, sir." "Probably more inside." The radio burst to life again. "Highland Eagle, we're receiving reports of similar objects in major population centers worldwide. London, New York, Tokyo, Moscow. You are our closest observation point. We need intelligence." Mackenzie made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "Thompson, maintain contact with control. Davies, Williams, you're with me. We're going for a closer look." They moved through the highland terrain like ghosts. Years of training in hostile environments had taught them to use every shadow, every ridge, every patch of heather to their advantage. As they drew closer to the sphere, the humming grew louder, and Mackenzie noticed that small electronic devices were beginning to malfunction. Williams' digital watch had stopped working entirely from their new position behind a cluster of ancient stones. They could see the alien figures more clearly. They were setting up what appeared to be some kind of perimeter. The devices they carried looked like weapons, though their design was unlike anything in human military arsenals. Long, curved instruments that seemed to be carved from a single piece of dark crystal. "They're organizing," Davies whispered. "Look at the way they move." "Military precision." Mackenzie nodded. These weren't random invaders or explorers. This was a coordinated operation. He was about to order a withdrawal to report their findings when one of the alien figures suddenly stopped and turned directly toward their hiding position, the creature's head tilted at an impossible angle. And Mackenzie felt a pressure in his mind, as if something was trying to push into his thoughts. Williams gasped beside him, clutching his head. "They know we're here," Williams said through gritted teeth. The alien figure pointed at their location and made a sound that was part whistle, part electronic shriek. Immediately, a dozen of its companions began moving toward the stone cluster with inhuman speed. "Move!" Mackenzie ordered. They broke cover and ran, but the aliens were faster. Much faster. Within seconds, the creatures had surrounded them with a precision that spoke of advanced tactical coordination. Mackenzie and his team found themselves standing in a circle, weapons raised but knowing they were hopelessly outmatched. The alien who had first spotted them approached slowly. Up close, Mackenzie could see that its skin wasn't just shifting colors, it was actually moving, like liquid metal barely contained by an invisible force. Its eyes were solid black, reflecting no light, and when it opened what might have been its mouth, Mackenzie saw rows of crystalline teeth. The creature spoke, and impossibly, the words formed in English in Mackenzie's mind rather than through his ears. "Primitive warriors of the Third Rock," the voice said with obvious disdain. "You have been observed. Your species shows potential for useful labor, but your aggressive tendencies require correction. Who are you? Mackenzie demanded, his rifle still trained on the creature even though he suspected bullets would be useless. I am War Prime Zethkalar of the Hegemony Fleet. Your world has been selected for incorporation into our empire. Resistance will result in immediate pacification. Davy stepped forward slightly. Pacification? The alien's head turned to regard Davies with the same tilted, predatory motion. Your military forces will be eliminated. Your population centers will be controlled. Those who submit will be permitted to serve. Those who resist will be processed into basic materials. Mackenzie felt a cold rage building in his chest. He'd seen tyrants and warlords before, but this creature spoke of enslaving humanity with the casual tone one might use to discuss the weather. And if we refuse? He asked. Zethkalar made a sound that might have been laughter. Refusal is not comprehensible. We have destroyed 17 civilizations across this galactic arm. Your species is notably primitive. Your weapons are chemical-based projectiles. Your fastest vessels barely reach your nearest celestial neighbor. Your energy sources are still derived from burning organic matter. The alien gestured toward the sphere. Our vessel is powered by controlled stellar collapse. Our weapons manipulate matter at the subatomic level. Our warriors are enhanced beyond the limitations of biological flesh. You cannot resist. Williams, youngest and perhaps most honest of them all, spoke up. Then why are you talking to us? Why not just get on with it? Zethkalar's black eyes fixed on Williams with what might have been curiosity. Your species shows unusual neural complexity for primitives. Some of you may be suitable for enhancement into auxiliary forces. We test your warriors to determine which are worth preserving. Mackenzie realized this was both an interrogation and an audition. What kind of test? Simple. You fight one of us. If you demonstrate sufficient skill, your people may be permitted to serve as soldiers rather than laborers. If you fail, the alien gestured dismissively. The outcome is irrelevant? Davies laughed bitterly. One of us against one of you? That's not a test, it's an execution. Perhaps. But it is the only opportunity your species will be given to prove its worth. Mackenzie looked at his men. They were good soldiers, among the best humanity had produced, but they were still human. Still limited by biology, by gravity, by the basic physics that govern mortal flesh. The aliens before them moved with impossible grace and spoke casually of technologies that sounded like magic. But they were. SAS, they didn't surrender. And they didn't back down from impossible odds. I'll do it, Mackenzie said, Zethkalar's head tilted again. You volunteer to face combat against a hegemony warrior? I volunteer to show you what human soldiers are made of. The alien made that laughing sound again. Interesting. Your neural patterns suggest you actually believe you might survive this encounter. Maybe I don't. But maybe I'll surprise you. Zethkalar gestured. And the other alien stepped back, forming a wider circle. The War Prime itself began to change, its liquid metal skin flowing and reshaping. Its limbs extended and thickened with visible muscle mass that hadn't been there moments before. Spines erupted from its shoulders and forearms, and its hands transformed into clawed appendages that gleamed like polished steel. Your weapons are permitted, Zethkalar said. Use whatever advantages your primitive technology provides. Mackenzie checked his rifle, knowing it was probably useless but unwilling to face this fight unarmed. He glanced at Davies and Thompson, who gave him small nods of encouragement. Williams looked terrified but determined. Whatever happens, Mackenzie told them quietly, remember what you see. Someone needs to report this. Zethkalar's transformation completed, and it now stood nearly 10 feet tall, its body a perfect fusion of alien biology and what appeared to be living metal. When it moved, it flowed like water but struck like lightning. Begin, it said. Mackenzie opened fire. His rifle spat 30 rounds of NATO standard ammunition in controlled bursts aimed at center mass. The bullet struck the alien's chest and simply stopped. They hung in the air for a moment, suspended by some invisible force, then dropped harmlessly to the ground. Zethkalar moved. One moment it was 10 meters away, the next it was directly in front of Mackenzie, one clawed hand wrapped around his throat and lifting him off the ground. "Disappointing," the alien said. "Your warriors are truly primitive." Mackenzie couldn't breathe, but he managed to pull the pin from a grenade and drop it at the alien's feet. Zethkalar glanced down at the small explosive device with what might have been amusement. Chemical explosives? How quaint. The grenade detonated. The explosion was enormous, filling the air with smoke and debris. When it cleared, Zethkalar stood exactly where it had been, completely unharmed. Mackenzie was still suspended by the throat, but the alien's grip had not even tightened during the blast. "Your species relies on crude force multipliers," Zethkalar observed. "Explosives. Projecti." 3 hours later, Mackenzie and his team crouched in a cave system they'd used for survival training. The highland wilderness had become a battlefield, and the sounds of alien pursuit echoed across the mountains. Their brief victory had bought them time. But it had also escalated the situation beyond anything they could have imagined. Thompson's radio crackled with frantic communications from military commands around the world. The brief disruption they'd caused to the alien ship in Scotland had been detected by similar vessels in other locations, and the response was immediate and devastating. "Highland Eagle, this is Control." The voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "We're reading massive energy signatures from alien vessels worldwide. They appear to be preparing coordinated strikes on military installations." Mackenzie keyed his radio. "Control, what's the status of evacuation protocols?" "All major cities are in full evacuation. But Highland Eagle, we need to know exactly what you did. The aliens are specifically targeting areas with military communications equipment. They're looking for something." Davies, who had been monitoring alien communications through Thompson's modified equipment, looked up grimly. "They're looking for us, sir. They're scanning for the frequency signature of our psychic disruptor." Williams, still shaken from witnessing Mackenzie's near death at alien hands, was watching the cave entrance. Movement outside. 3 clicks north and closing. Mackenzie peered through the scope Davies handed him. A group of 12 aliens was moving through the heather with deadly purpose. But these weren't like the ones they'd encountered before. These aliens wore what appeared to be armor that seemed to absorb light itself, making them difficult to track visually. Their weapons were different, too larger, more complex, with multiple crystalline components that pulsed with inner fire. "Enhanced hunters," Thompson said, reading alien communications. "Zethkalar has called for specialist troops to track us down. Apparently we've embarrassed the hegemony in front of their fleet commanders." "How embarrassed?" Mackenzie asked. "According to their chatter, this is the first time in over 200 years that primitives have caused damage to hegemony equipment. There are political implications in their command structure." Davies grinned despite their desperate situation. "Politics? Even cosmic conquerors have office drama." The grin faded when the ground began to vibrate. Through the cave opening, they could see the alien sphere rising from Glen Nevis, its surface now covered in weapon emplacements that hadn't been visible before. The vessel was preparing for something massive. "Control, Highland Eagle," Mackenzie spoke urgently into his radio. "The alien mothership is powering up what appear to be heavy weapons. Recommend immediate dispersal of any forces in the Scottish region." "Negative, Highland Eagle. We have Royal Marines inbound to your position." "ETA 20 minutes. Call them off," Mackenzie shouted. "These things will slaughter conventional forces." But it was too late. Through Thompson's equipment, they could hear alien communications coordinating a response to incoming human military units. Zethkalar's voice was prominent among them. And the war prime sounded absolutely furious. "The primitive who wounded my pride approaches with reinforcements." Zethkalar's mental voice crackled through their speakers. "Excellent. I will demonstrate proper conquest techniques to the fleet observers. These humans will learn the price of resistance." Mackenzie made a decision that violated every tactical principle he'd ever learned. Instead of waiting for support or attempting to escape, he stood up and walked toward the cave entrance. "Sir, what are you doing?" Williams called after him. Something stupid, Mackenzie replied, but maybe necessary. He emerged from the cave with his hands raised, making himself visible to the approaching alien hunters. Within seconds, they had surrounded him, their dark armor making them look like living shadows against the highland landscape. Zethkalar materialized in the center of the group, its form more terrifying than before. The War Prime had undergone another transformation and now stood nearly 12 feet tall. Its liquid metal skin rippled with what appeared to be contained energy, and when it moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around it. The primitive who dares to wound a War Prime of the hegemony, Zethkalar said, its mental voice dripping with malice. You will be made an example for your species. Before you kill me, Mackenzie said, his voice steady despite the terror he felt, I want to understand something. Why are you really here? Zethkalar tilted its massive head. Curiosity from cattle is unusual but irrelevant. Humor me. You said you've destroyed 17 civilizations. That's a lot of effort for a species that supposedly conquers through superior technology. If you're so advanced, why the elaborate testing? Why the demonstrations? Why not just wipe us out and be done with it? The alien was silent for a long moment. Around them, the other hunters shifted restlessly, their weapons trained on Mackenzie but held in check by their commander's presence. Your species asks better questions than most, Zethkalar admitted finally. Very well. The hegemony does not simply destroy, we incorporate. Useful species become part of our empire. Useless species become resources. And the testing determines which category we fall into? Precisely. Your neural complexity suggests potential for enhancement into auxiliary forces. But your primitive aggression requires careful evaluation. Most species either submit immediately or resist foolishly until extinction. You have done neither. Mackenzie heard helicopter rotors in the distance. The Royal Marines were approaching, flying directly into what would become a massacre. He had to buy time, had to find some way to level the playing field. You said we wounded your pride. How exactly did 3 humans with primitive weapons manage that? Zethkalar's form rippled with what might have been anger. You targeted our containment systems with crude explosives, demonstrating knowledge you should not possess. You disrupted our command network with electromagnetic manipulation, showing tactical thinking beyond your technological base. You forced me to acknowledge that primitives could threaten hegemony assets. And that embarrassed you in front of your superiors? The Fleet Prime observed our encounter through shared consciousness. My failure to immediately dominate human resistance forces has raised questions about my effectiveness as War Prime. Mackenzie understood now. This wasn't just about conquest, it was about Zethkalar's personal reputation within alien hierarchy. And that gave him leverage. So if you kill me and my team, you prove that you can handle primitive resistance. But what does that actually prove? That a cosmic warrior with godlike technology can murder a few humans? That's not exactly impressive. The helicopter sounds were getting closer. Mackenzie could see the aircraft now, Royal Marines in full combat gear rappelling toward the ground. They had no idea what they were facing. Zethkalar's attention shifted to the approaching humans. Your reinforcements arrived to die with honor, acceptable. Wait, Mackenzie said. You want to prove your worth to the Fleet Prime? Then prove it properly. Explain. Mackenzie took a breath and committed to the most insane plan he'd ever conceived. Single combat. You against me, no technological advantages on either side. Pure warrior skill. If you win, you've demonstrated that hegemony warriors are superior to humans even without your advanced equipment. If I win, Zethkalar's laughter was like breaking glass. If you win? Primitive, I have been enhanced beyond your comprehension. My reflexes operate at superhuman speeds. My strength can crush steel. My tactical processing analyzes millions of combat variables simultaneously. Then you should have no problem beating a human in fair combat. The alien's form shifted, and Mackenzie realized he'd struck home. In a warrior culture, the challenge of fair combat would be difficult to refuse, especially in front of observers. You propose to face me without weapons? Without technological assistance? Hand-to-hand combat. Just warrior against warrior. The helicopters were landing now. Mackenzie could see Major Harrison leading a full company of Marines, all armed with the most advanced equipment the British military could provide. It wouldn't matter. Against hegemony technology, they might as well be carrying pointed sticks. Amusing, Zethkalar said. But irrelevant, observe. The war prime gestured toward the landing Marines. The air around the helicopters suddenly began to shimmer, and Mackenzie watched in horror as the aircraft simply stopped, not crashed, not destroyed, but frozen in time as if they'd been caught in a photograph. Temporal distortion field, Zethkalar explained casually. Your reinforcements are experiencing time at approximately 1,000th normal rate. From their perspective, this conversation is occurring over several hours. From our perspective, they are effectively motionless. Mackenzie stared at the frozen tableau of Marines caught mid-motion as they disembarked from their helicopters. Some were suspended in midair, their faces locked in expressions of determination and alertness. Their equipment hung motionless around them, useless against an enemy that could manipulate time itself. Now, do you understand the futility of resistance? Zethkalar asked. We do not simply possess superior weapons, we operate under superior physics. But Mackenzie was thinking. The alien had revealed something important. If they could manipulate time fields, why hadn't they used that capability earlier? Why allow the humans to escape at all? You're showy. The gesture of respect froze every human in the cave system. Royal Marines who had been preparing to open fire hesitated, confused by an alien warrior offering what appeared to be a salute to their wounded commanding officer. Zethkalar's voice echoed in their minds, but the tone was different now, less arrogant, more thoughtful. In 300 cycles of conquest, no primitive species has forced a war prime to acknowledge their combat worthiness. Your tactics are crude, your technology primitive, but your strategic thinking... The alien paused, its metallic head tilting in that characteristic motion. Your strategic thinking approaches our own level. Major Harrison had reached the cave floor and was assessing the situation with professional calm. Captain Mackenzie, are you injured? Nothing that won't heal, Mackenzie lied, trying to ignore the blood he was coughing up. Major, meet War Prime Zethkalar of the Hegemony. We've been having a philosophical discussion about the nature of resistance. Harrison looked between his wounded captain and the towering alien warrior, trying to process a situation that definitely wasn't covered in any military manual. Should we be shooting it, sir? Uncertain, Mackenzie admitted. Zethkalar, what happens now? Your temporal demonstration failed, your hunters are outnumbered, and I'm pretty sure my communications specialist is currently jamming your connection to your fleet. Thompson's voice crackled through their radio headsets. Confirmed, sir. I'm broadcasting white noise across their psychic frequencies. The alien mothership is effectively blind to events down here. Zethkalar made that glass-breaking laughter sound again. Impressive. You have successfully isolated a hegemony war prime from command oversight. This has never occurred in recorded history. Davies, still keeping his rifle trained on the alien but no longer looking quite as hostile, spoke up. So what's the protocol for something that's never happened before? There is no protocol, Zethkalar admitted. The situation is unprecedented. However, I am authorized to make tactical decisions in the absence of fleet oversight. Mackenzie felt a chill that had nothing to do with the underground stream. What kind of tactical decisions? The Hegemony Conquest Protocol requires reassessment when primitive species demonstrate unexpected capabilities. Your performance today indicates that humans may be significantly more valuable than initial surveys suggested. Major Harrison stepped forward. Valuable how? Zethkalar's form began to shift again, but this time instead of becoming more threatening, it was returning to its original proportions. The War Prime was deliberately making itself less intimidating. The hegemony has conquered many worlds, but we have only encountered 7 species with sufficient neural complexity for full enhancement into auxiliary forces. Most become laborers or are processed for raw materials. But species with tactical creativity, adaptive problem-solving, and resistance to psychological intimidation. You want to recruit us, Mackenzie realized. Not recruit, elevate, enhanced humans could serve as war primes themselves, commanding fleets and expanding the hegemony across new galactic regions. The cave fell silent except for the sound of dripping water and the distant voices of Marines, establishing security above ground. Mackenzie looked around at his men, seeing his own thoughts reflected in their faces. It was Davies who spoke first. And if we refuse this generous offer? Zethkalar's tone became matter-of-fact. Standard protocols resume. Planetary pacification, population sorting, resource extraction. Genocide, you mean? Harrison said flatly. Inefficient species elimination, yes, but unnecessary if humans demonstrate willingness to join the galactic community as equals rather than subjects. Mackenzie struggled to his feet, waving off Davies' attempt to support him. He needed to think clearly, and pain was helping him focus. Zethkalar, I need to understand something. This whole invasion, the testing, the demonstrations, the combat trials, this isn't really about conquest, is it? The alien's black eyes fixed on him with renewed interest. Explain your reasoning. A civilization advanced enough to manipulate time and space, to travel between stars and destroy 17 previous species. That civilization doesn't need to test primitive warriors to determine resistance capabilities. You could have glassed our planet from orbit and been done with it. Continue? This is recruitment. The whole invasion is an elaborate job interview. You're looking for a species tough enough and smart enough to help you expand your empire. But you can't just ask because any species worth having wouldn't submit voluntarily? Zethkalar was silent for a long moment, and Mackenzie could sense approval radiating from the alien's mind. Your analysis is partially correct, the War Prime said finally. The hegemony spans 12,000 star systems. Maintaining control over such vast distances requires constant expansion of our auxiliary forces. But recruitment is not the primary objective. Then what is? Survival. The single word hit the assembled humans like a physical blow. Mackenzie felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. You're running from something. We are preparing for something. Long-range scouts have detected evidence of an extragalactic threat moving toward this galaxy cluster. Our projections suggest contact within 5,000 Earth years. The hegemony must be prepared. Harrison stepped forward. What kind of threat? Zethkalar's form rippled with what might have been fear. A civilization that treats our level of technology as we treat yours. They have been consuming entire galaxies, converting all matter and energy to support their expansion. They are not conquerors, they are devourers. And you think humans can help against something like that? Davies asked. We think humans represent something we have never encountered before. Most species we test either submit immediately or resist until extinction. Humans do neither. You adapt. You improvise. You find ways to win fights you should lose. Mackenzie was beginning to understand the scope of what they were facing. How many species have you tested who managed to damage hegemony equipment? None. How many forced a war prime to hand-to-hand combat? None. How many successfully isolated a hegemony commander from fleet oversight? You are the first. Thompson's voice crackled through their headsets again. Sir, I'm picking up massive energy signatures from orbit. Multiple alien vessels are moving toward Earth's atmosphere. The local mothership is requesting fleet support. Zethkalar's head snapped up in apparent alarm. Fleet Prime Kethmoran is approaching. Your jamming will not prevent detection once the fleet command ship enters local space. Is that bad? Mackenzie asked. Fleet Prime Kethmoran does not approve of extended testing protocols. If this situation appears to indicate war prime incompetence, immediate planetary pacification will be ordered. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Whatever was happening in this Scottish cave, it would determine the fate of the entire human species within the next few minutes. How long do we have? Harrison asked. 6 of your time units. Minutes. Mackenzie made a decision that violated every principle of military hierarchy. Major, I need you to get your Marines topside and establish communications with every military command on Earth. Tell them to power down all offensive capabilities immediately. Sir? If we're going to save humanity, we need to do it without looking like a threat. Zethkalar, I need to know exactly what this Fleet Prime is expecting to see when he arrives. The alien's response was immediate. Evidence of successful primitive pacification. Defeated human forces, demonstration of hegemony superiority, and tactical assessment of species value. Then that's what we're going to give him. Davies looked at his captain with growing alarm. Sir, you're not seriously considering. I'm considering whatever keeps 8 billion people alive. Mackenzie cut him off. Zethkalar? If humans voluntarily submitted to hegemony authority, would that satisfy your Fleet Prime's requirements? Voluntary submission has occurred with 4 of the 7 species selected for enhancement. It is considered the optimal outcome. And enhanced humans would maintain some degree of autonomy? Enhanced species command their own sectors under hegemony oversight. They retain cultural identity and limited self-governance. Mackenzie looked around at his men. Gentlemen, I'm about to make a decision that's either going to save our species or doom it. I need to know if you trust my judgment. Harrison didn't hesitate. I've followed you through 3 impossible situations, Captain. This is just one more. Davies nodded. Aye, sir. But I'm hoping you have a plan beyond surrender to the aliens. I have a plan, Mackenzie assured him. Thompson, how long before the Fleet Prime arrives? 4 minutes, sir. Right, Zethkalar, I'm prepared to offer formal human submission to hegemony authority with one condition. The aliens' form tensed. Primitives do not dictate conditions to the hegemony. This one does. My condition is simple: humans maintain command authority over Earth's military forces during the enhancement process. Will submit to hegemony oversight, accept technological upgrades, and serve as auxiliary forces. But Earth's defenses remain under human control. Impossible. Enhanced species integrate fully into hegemony command structures. Mackenzie smiled, and there was something predatory in his expression. Then I guess we'll have to do this the hard way. Explain. You said Fleet Prime Kethmoran expects to see evidence of successful pacification. Here's what he's going to see instead: a human military commander.